identification. One thing we know about them is they obviously have a bigger cranial capacity, so they're way ahead of us intelligence-wise. And we can't look at technology as a sign of intelligence. In some ways, it's a sign of weakness because we keep making things to make things easier. A Bigfoot looks at you and sees you using a hammer and thinks, wow, he's so weak he had to make a tool to do that job. So it's all relative. We have to quit being cocky about this technology thing.
Now, a question for both of you. The amount of people have gone missing in the National Forest System since about the early 1900s when they started keeping track is huge. I'm talking huge amount of people. Yeah, people go out and they fall in a hole, or they have a heart attack, or they accidentally shoot themselves instead of shooting the deer, or they fall off a cliff, but not as many. It's been disappearing. Do you have any idea what's going on there? Is that Bigfoot related or something else that we don't know about?
Yeah, a lot of factors there. I'm going to say within that group of people, there's definitely going to be some Bigfoot encounters. Now, whether or not it's a standoff or something aggressive, a Bigfoot is just like a human in that, they've got jerks in their clans too, So you're going to have the really angry guy, the same guy that in our city might, shoot his neighbor for a barking dog. Bigfoot has those guys too. So it's going to happen now and then. I don't think it's as big as people think it is. I think it's such a rare occurrence. And there's a few Bigfoot cases where there seems to be kind of a rogue Bigfoot that like nobody wants to claim. And they can get very aggressive.
Well, the reason why I'm saying this, it was one case that I'm still digging into, a case where the parents were out in the campground. They had a 5-year-old kid. And the father was putting up the tent. The mother was doing her thing. The kid was maybe 25 feet away from him. And the father was paying attention, but he took his eye off the kid for a minute or so. The kid vanished. Okay, the park police, the rangers, went out looking for like 3 days, trying to find the kid. Now, there was a major river right there. Then there was other little rivers and creeks and all this stuff. They found the boy's body 15 miles away on a side of a mountain, and the clothes were taken off the boy, kind of folded up, and there's the bones.
Wow.
And that, now maybe it's maybe it's a human predator doing it, but there's cases like that. But the point is, how can a 5-year-old boy walk 15 miles and cross rivers and go up the side of a mountain?
I have a...
Yeah, what's your theory?
Sharon.
Go ahead.
I do have a theory on that because I have often wondered whether the 411 Missing series of books that David Paulides has written were talking about potentially Bigfoot encounters or something else. I've kind of come to the conclusion that if it was a Bigfoot doing these kidnappings or abductions of people and children, etc., there would have been a lot more evidence left behind. There would be footprints. There would be scents that the dogs could track. Obviously, Bigfoot is famous for the smell.
Oh, yeah.
The lingering smell, even. And there seems to be none of that in these missing cases in national parks.
But what do you think it could be then?
Well, my theory is that this is an extraterrestrial kind of like zone that has been set aside for potential abductions. That's what I'm thinking. There's There's no footprints where these bodies are found. They seem to be just dropped in these areas from someplace above, and a lot of the areas that they find these bodies are on top of mountains, large, high peaks that would be very difficult for anybody to get to. As a matter of fact, Les Strauss, the Survivor Man, did an episode about this with the 411 Missing author, and he said that where some of these children have been found on top of mountains, he could not get to himself. As someone who's very well versed in the field and able to travel long distances, he said there's no way that children could get there in the short period of time that they were missing, and the fact that there was no other evidence of anybody actually doing it from the ground. As a matter of fact, if you'll notice, our technical guy has said that he's a drone pilot as well, and he says that you cannot even fly a drone in national parks. There is a airspace restriction put on those areas as well, which kind of lends me to believe that it could be a more extraterrestrial problem.
Now, do you think that's something that goes back to Eisenhower, that story that was circulating, that we made agreement with a species of aliens where they could maybe abduct a certain amount of people, and that's one of the areas?
I think you might be correct there, Gary. I think there is probably a major issue in the disclosure process that they do not want to get out to the public. And the fact that if there was some kind of an agreement, matter of fact, some people have mentioned that there's an actual treaty out there that was created back in those days by President Eisenhower with the aliens at that point, and who knows what race we're dealing with now, where they are actually doing these abductions, and we might not even have the ability to control them or defend against their ability to doing that. And maybe this is exactly what's going on. And, of course, the disclosure process that we're asking for to find out what's going on, they don't want to get that information out to the public.
Well, when he wrote these books, he did a lot of investigation, and he tried to get under the Freedom of Information Act, these cases of these missing people. And the Park Service basically said, okay, well, but they stalled him a lot, and then they came out with like $1 million if you want it. And what I remember hearing him on Art Bell one time show saying that, let's face it, if you go missing in the park like that, they spend 1, 2, 3 days looking for you, and that's it. Then they don't want to talk about it.
Yes, and the whole idea that so many people go missing in these national and state parks, and they're not even keeping records of this. I think that's what David Paulides was alarmed at as well, is that being an ex-police officer, he knows that you can go to any community and they'll have a list of the missing persons that have been taken in their areas. Whether they're able to solve the case or not, at least even the cold cases are still on record. And the information about the person missing is there. Supposedly the national parks do not do that. They don't keep track of the statistics of how many people are actually missing in their jurisdictions.
They don't want to. Your comment, Sharon, what's your gut feeling about that, just out of curiosity?
I don't know. I'm very logic-minded, and I tend to think, well, why take them from forests? And why cover that up? I mean, we know there's abductees in their own homes, so I'm not sure what I think of that one. But,
well, what I'm thinking too, a lot of the abductees are taken from their homes. They're returned. These people aren't returned. And Mary Joyce, do either one of you guys know who she is?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, you know what Peter Davenport does. Well, she does the same thing in North Carolina. And
yes.
Skywatch, Casimir's.com. And she is a retired reporter. I mean, she worked for some major newspapers, heavy duty. And I have had her on my show. She's going to be back on, I think, next week. She says quite seriously to me that there's an underground base in North Carolina. She told me where, but I don't want to talk about it till she's on the show again. But where they are aliens working with our military, and she's heard it from too many people high up. But those aliens, what she's claiming, are not the friendly ones. These are the ones that were given permission to abduct people, and they're abducting more than they're supposed to, but they can't control it because they have technology that we want. But they also supposedly told Eisenhower, if you don't go along with what we want, they could, that could be the end of us. But she said they're cannibals.
Uh-huh.
Now, like a lot of these missing people, and not just the little boy case, there was a jogger, which she, I think, I don't remember what her profession was, but it was a major profession. She was jogging with a couple friends, and all of a sudden she decided her friends wanted to take a little rest. She kept on going. She's done that hundreds of times where she was jogging up there in the woods. Hundreds of times. She knew it, right? They didn't find her. Not for days later. Then when they find her, they find, okay, now a cougar or anything like that, they're going to eat you. They're going to tear you apart. Parts of you are going to be over there. Parts of, whatever, the bones are going to be over there. Her, it's same thing. Her bones were in a nice little pile, and her clothes were kind of over here all together. My feeling Now, my feeling is maybe they're being maybe from a UFO, like they do the cattle. They get taken up or whatever. They do their whatever, and then they drop the remains back off, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, that's a scary option to think about, that we're not even safe in our own national parks, or and I think you're right, is that there are abductions that are very well researched and studied, but most of the abductees end up coming back and either knowing what happened to them or being able to tell a story of missing time or something like that. And these people that just go missing. They don't come back. Matter of fact, there is a strange statistic that I heard that every year in the United States there's a certain amount of people that go missing, and they say that most of them are not missing people, but probably just running away, or people that don't want to be found. That's the bulk of them. But a small, maybe not a small, but maybe a third of the people that go missing, they were saying the figure was about 35,000 people every year. The statistics don't change. No matter how many new souls there are on the planet, the population grows. But that same 35,000 folks seem to be disappearing every year around the country. And that's a scary statistic that you would think would change over time, and it does not seem to change.
Well, I say this, if people wanted to run away and disappear, it's not like before the internet, okay? I mean, 20 years ago, you could actually disappear very easy. Get another social security number, and because there was no real way to trace you. Now, you can trace somebody down. It's almost impossible to vanish without leaving some type of record. So I find if people get on their bicycle or they get on their car and decide they're going to go on a road trip and they never see the car again and they never see the person again, something is out there, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't happen to me and my family, I guess I'll be happy. Now, what's your take on that, Sharon?
No, I'm not in agreement. I'm not in agreement with this, but that's just me, and it makes no logical sense to me. Why would you leave a pile of bones and clothing there if you had the technology to to do the things that we're saying they can do. Why would they just drop the body off? And sometimes the body doesn't even seem to have any real tampering done with it. So, no,